Good morning, everybody, and welcome to all of you who have taken the trouble to come today, this morning. Thank you all for coming. As a part of fellowship lectures and the Resource Center of the Crafts Council of Telangana, we are extremely happy, honored, and privileged to have Mr. Peter Lee, a well-known authority on the historical background of the Malay Archipelago of the Indian Chins. He's a researcher of deep knowledge. We look forward to learning in depth about the travels of our textile craft from India to across shores of the Southeast Asia. He's a renowned authority, historian, and cultural researcher. It is going to be an extremely learning and something that we are not generally used to, because he is very serious about his work. So we hope all of you students, I've noticed, have come from NIFT. It will be very useful. Take down notes and, get back and use it. We have a very rich history in India. So we are really proud that it has traveled across. And to this day, it has been used. Welcome, sir, Mr. Peter Lee. I invite our chairperson, Anuradha Bishnoi, to come and honor our founder, Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay, by lighting a lamp. And I also request others, Mr. Peter Lee and some others, to come and join in lighting the lamp. Thank you. Now I invite our chairperson, Anuradha Bishnoi, to come and say a few words and welcome you all.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Crafts Council of Telangana, I welcome our speaker for today, Mr. Peter Lee, who has honored us by coming to Hyderabad, all the way from Singapore. Many esteemed guests and our dear members. And of course, all our students who have joined us today. It's a huge honor to have all of you here. This talk has generated a lot of interest in the connoisseurs of the textile in the textiles. India and the Malay Archipelago have a long history of association in a variety of ways. Mr. Lee, an independent researcher, collector of textiles and photographs for over 35 years, has curated a number of shows and made documentaries also. We are most grateful to him for taking out his valuable time to give us this talk, WASTRA, Indian Textiles in Island Southeast Asia, 1400 to 1900. So without any delay, I would request Kusum to give us an introduction about Mr. Peter, and we can start our presentation. Thank you, and I'm sure we'll have a very interesting and engrossing morning. Thank you, everyone.
Would like to invite Yashwant Ramamurthy, an eminent architect and designer of Hyderabad, to come and introduce Mr. Peter Lee and invite him for the talk. Thank you.
Good morning and A very warm welcome to everyone here. I think this is a record-breaking house that we have today. And thank you all for coming here, including the students of NIFT. We're greatly honored that you're here with us. Mr. Peter Lee, as you may have heard, is an independent researcher and the founding curator of the National University of Singapore's Baba House, a historical house museum. He has been an avid collector of textiles and photographs since the year 1991 and a curator and researcher since 1998 for the Peranakan Museum, Asian Civilizations Museum, Fukuoka Art Museum and Shoto Museum. He was also the host of 2 seasons of Channel News Asia's documentary, The Mark of Empire 2019 to 2022. Having just contributed a chapter to the new iteration of Cambridge History of Southeast Asia 2025, he co-curated a batik exhibition at the Peranakan Museum in 2024 and is preparing another one there for this year. He will soon begin filming the 3rd season of the documentary. It gives me great pleasure to invite Mr. Peter Lee to the stage to make his presentation for the morning. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for this incredibly warm welcome. So exciting to be here and to share my kind of crazy work and love for Indian textiles with Hyderabad. My talk, WASTRA, it is actually, I've used this word because it is the word in Malay for textiles, and obviously we know where that word comes from. And why 1400 to 1900? Because that is the period that we have found textiles that have been kept in local communities all over island Southeast Asia. I'd just like to share how my love affair with your city started. In 2016, I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Jagdish Mittal through collector friends Jivak and Banu Papia, collectors from the US. They have an exhibition coming up on Indian textiles in Houston, I think in the middle of this year. I happened to meet them in London, and they were coming to Hyderabad, and sounds crazy, but I literally opened a Singapore Airlines route map and where shall I go to India this time? And there was flights available to Hyderabad. It was so random. And because of this timely coincidence, I was able to tag along Banu and Jivak's visit to Jagdish Mittal, and it was so wonderful. I ended up coming back so many times. And each trip I would sit with him and he would take out a group of textiles, and it was a masterclass in all these different aspects of Indian textiles. It was a real privilege to visit him. I love the picture on the right. It shows him proudly showing me his batik work, which he had made as a student in Shantiniketan. I visited him right up to October last year. I was very busy with this exhibition, and after it opened in October, I really have to visit Mittalji, and I'm so glad I did. In honor of his 99th birthday, I presented him with 3 textiles donated to his trust. So this is 3 trade textiles from India sent to the Malay Archipelago and now back in Hyderabad. Of course, all this is only possible through the kind help of his grandchildren, Naveen here on the right, and Uma, who is here today. They're my Hyderabad family, and one of the main reasons I keep coming back. The collection we have of Indian trade textiles in Singapore is named after my late parents, Mr. and Mrs. Lee Kip Lee. My mother was the instigator. She is the chief hoarder of our family, accumulating tons of stuff, but she had this eye for beauty, and Himata kindly reminded me of an anecdote I had mentioned some time ago when she was really in the last few days of her life. I presented her, a friend had given me a beautifully made rosary it was from Portugal. It had filigree work and pistil. And she held it in her hand and her eyes just opened up and she smiled and she was so in awe of beauty. And to me, it sort of made me really realize that, the beauty of handmade things is something right up to our last breath. We will never lose our appreciation of what hands can make, what our ancestors have made, and how deeply connected we are with beauty right to our last breath. And the collection we have is in honor of this deep love for beauty. The core collection actually comprises photographs, and it's a collection of the earliest images of Southeast Asia, including these, for example, of the Burmese royals, the Thai king Mongkut on the left, a Balinese prince on the right. And of course, when you look, it's a wonderful resource for textiles, and many of what they're wearing comes from India. This is Javanese, the consort of a Javanese sultan. But the collection also has very early images of India. So, for example, this is a daguerreotype from the 1850s from a studio in Calcutta, John Newland. Some Baron Alexis de Lagrange from about 1850, of course, John Murray. And of course, I also have some of notable people from your city. This is Salajang on the left, as well as this Shah Jahan Begum of Bhopal. So early photographs of Southeast Asia and India. We also have a very interesting group of the earliest pictures of members of the Indian community in Singapore. So, for example, this dancer, 18 years old, this was taken in 1857. It is among a group of the earliest photographs of Singapore, as well as these other very interesting early images, including this chariot for ceremony for the Nagodaga, which is actually one of the earliest religious institutions built in Singapore. And this very interesting image of dancers on the right. We have a very large collection of Indian trade textiles. So these were made from Gujarat to the Deccan and Bengal, traded to Southeast Asia. From the earliest ones have been carbon dated to the late 14th century, right up to the 20th century. So this is a love affair going several centuries. The example on the top right, many of these have been found in Sulawesi. These have been carbon dated to the 14th century, many of them. And the one on the left is really striking. We call this Matahari, or the sun, kind of the sign motif. It's a very large cloth, maybe like 2 by 2, no, it's about 2 by 3 meters. And we have been making gifts to various institutions. So these two examples were given to the Yale University Art Gallery. We have made donations to the Art Gallery of South Australia, to museums in Singapore and Japan, and loans as well to Singapore, Canada, and most recently at the Bengal Textiles exhibition in Calcutta, where it's still on. No, I think it closes this month. This is an example of the collections we have. This is a current display, Textile Masters to the World. These are an exhibition of Chin's textiles, now on at the Asian Civilizations Museum. If you ever visit, it's on the 3rd floor. And we have it's Chintz for the world. So the collection has kalamkaris for Europe, and the middle one is for Iran. Left and right for Europe, France, or the Netherlands. And even for Japan, where in the 19th century, traded textiles that came through Nagasaki were added onto gentlemen's kimono. So this is an inner kimono made of silk with a patchwork of Manchester cottons and kalamkaris. The Japanese also used Indian textiles for the tea ceremony. This is the loose leaf or sencha tea ceremony. And they used kalamkaris for wrapping tea utensils. And these little wrappers, you can see the one on the red one on the right has two, is for the blue and white teacups. Well, we start with a map, of course. Sorry, it's not a very good map, but you have, of course, India on the left and in red, Southeast Asia. But these textiles that we found are mostly spread across island Southeast Asia, which actually comprises Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia. And if you see in the red towns highlighted, these are the main places where Indian trade textiles have been found. So right across the seas, from Palembang and Lampung in South Sumatra, right up to Ambon. Palembang to Ambon would be about Delhi to Trivandrum, about that kind of distance. They were traded all over, but of course, these textiles were used and thrown away. But in some communities, they've been kept as heritage cloths, and that's how we have them. In Sulawesi, where you see Toraja, most of these early 14th century, 15th century cloths have been found there. The relationship between India and Southeast Asia goes back a long way. Of course, in the 2nd to 3rd century, we have the earliest Tamil inscriptions on pottery shards found in southern Thailand. Of course, 4th century, we find inscriptions in Sanskrit and Pallava in Kalimantan or Borneo. 7th century, we find Malay inscriptions in South Sumatra and Pallava script. So this is in the local language. And again, Tamil inscriptions in Pallava script in 9th century. And of course, then we have the influence of Islam, and we have Gujarati-style Islamic tombstones found in Sumatra and Java. We can see this strong influence in language. So in Malay, we have these terms for silk, cotton, the spinning wheel, and cloth, which very clearly shows the very long and deep relationship between India and island Southeast Asia. These words are used in Malay, loan words in Malay, and also many terms in Old Javanese. Some of these, of course, are obsolete, and I'm not sure if these terms were actually referencing actual garments worn. Of course, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata were translated into Javanese, and quite often maybe these terms, I think, I found, for example, things like the Valkala, this was a garment worn in one of the stories in the Ramayana and Mahabharata. So I'm not sure if these were actually garments that were traded eastwards as well. A little bit about the idea of Southeast Asia. So, we are often described as being between India and China. I'd like to say that actually Southeast Asia is this early global center connected to everywhere and drawing the best of everywhere and creating something new and quite different from all the other countries. So again, an interesting global hybrid center. And we see, for example, in this description of a state in Kalimantan called Negara Daha, where we see, as soon as the port opened, people from everywhere, came to it. So we have, this describes the kind of full range of people. Often the descriptions of types of people were not accurate. So anyone from South Asia they were called Kalinga people. In Malay, the term was Kaling. In the 20th century, it's become pejorative, but in the old Malay text, Kalinga was just the generic description of people from generally South India. And with access to luxury goods from the world, you read in Javanese and Malay texts that wealthy nobles and rulers owned garments from the world all over the region, and from China and the east and west. And I think this description of a beautifully dressed person sums it all up. He could dress in Javanese style, Siamese style, Tamil style, Arab style, and he would look fabulous in all these different ways of dressing. And it really shows you how kind of global, and nowadays we can choose whatever style we want to wear, right? And it also made me realize that dress form is really connected to political control. Governments and rulers would institute dress codes and sumptuary laws. People of certain ranks could wear certain colors. And here in Southeast Asia, I think there was less social policing, so people could just literally wear whatever they felt like wearing, and and it just showed you this kind of early global, almost really modern sensibility. And quite interestingly, Malacca was a very big kingdom in the peninsula, and dressing in Tamil style was strictly reserved for the king and for whoever it was the original clothing of. And they were only were allowed to wear it for prayers and weddings. So, Tamil style in the region was the height of fashion. The other interesting thing about our region is that the origin histories of many of the kingdoms included rulers from across the world. So in the Sejarah Melayu, which is the Malay history, you see references to the rulers having ancestors that could be as varied as Alexander the Great, Rajendra Chola, Ottoman sultans, Persian shahs, and Chinese emperors. So, it's sort of a global worldview. And the earliest royal titles we see have this is a mishmash of terms that are include Sanskrit, Arab, Persian, Javanese, and Malay, and just shows you how richly hybrid we were in the region. And then we find in text these kind of old terms. Many of them are unknown to me, and if anyone recognizes anything, please let me know. But we have some we know Ainul Banan, for example, world, but Mal and muslin, but and etc. So many terms, and rulers were described as the wealth and prestige of a ruler was often expressed in terms of the wide range of textiles he owned or was dressed in. And we also have tons of Dutch and Portuguese trade records, and so there are some researchers who've listed these terms, but endless terms, and we can only guess what some of them are. And maybe some of you can help me with identifying some of these. But we have long lists of all these terms. But it was also a two-way relationship. So the market demanded certain textiles, and these came to be the trade terms for these cloths. So, for example, the gobar, the second one, is a double-width chintz, and there was a huge demand for these like a king-size bedspread size kind of dimensions of our king bed-size beds, cloths, which were worn as garments. And here, the Indian merchants played a very big political role even in Southeast Asia. And here in Malacca, we have direct references to Indian traders who gained political power in Malacca. That the image is actually of a letter written by merchants, Tamil merchants, to the Portuguese, and these have been preserved in a Portuguese archive. And here I found a wonderful inventory of a Gujarati trader, and the estate of a Gujarati trader. This is when he passed away, and his huge amounts of surat chintzes and other textiles. The word sarasa you see here is the common term in the region for kalamkaris. And this trade went right up to the 20th century, and in the early 20th century, I was excited when I saw the word Hyderabad, but this is Hyderabad, Sindh, as you see on the top left. Sorry, wrong it's, city. But the Indian merchants of that time had incredible global networks, and look at the factories and offices all over from Sydney to Surabaya and Yokohama, and the business trade in textiles was really quite enormous. Yeah. On the right we have also just an indication of from the 1890s and 1900s. So many textile merchants in Singapore. Now I'll just run through a whole range of very interesting textiles that have found their way to Southeast Asia. The oldest, of course, we find this term in Old Javanese text called patawalas or patolas. As you know, these come from Gujarat, Patan, and these long sari length cloths from the 17th and 18th centuries have survived. They, as with all important trade, you have the full range of qualities. So something as beautifully made as this, with a perfectly registered double ikat, to much looser weaves like this. So a full range of prices, as with all traded goods. These all come 17th to 19th centuries. And I was recently given this by a collector. It is really in bad condition, but it has this Marathi script, and I've been told it says Madama Jama Gya. And someone suggested it could be the name of the elephant, but I was curious, why Marathi script on a kind of Gujarati textile? And apparently on the internet, anyway, I don't know how reliable this is, the earliest weavers of patolas were Marathi weavers taken to Gujarat. And could this be a very early textile? So it was acquired in the 1970s in Bali. And I think it probably needs to be carbon dated. But anyway, this is quite an interesting mystery textile. Then, of course, we have the kalamkaris. In Malay, we see the words Chindai, Chip, Chita, Kalamkari, and Surasa. The most common word actually was Surasa. And I have included this lovely poem to show how much it was treasured in the communities as something very like a coveted luxury textile. Yeah. As it is the cloth of princesses. The earliest examples tended to be, I believe that it as a technique that used the pen. The obvious earliest references for kalamkaris would have been woven textiles. And we even find in the Fustat fragments from Egypt, these very ancient Indian trade textiles found in a town in Egypt. They're mostly, many of them are imitation ikat designs. And it seemed natural that the first thing you would copy would be a woven pattern. But we have all kinds of imitation. Well, this is all block printed, not kalamkari, but iterations of copies of patolas, and they are characterized by these zigzag lines. And here is another one imitating a woven ginseng design. This is a very old Hindu-inspired pattern from Java. Here's a detail that of a double ikat pattern from Java that is still made in Bali called ginseng, and it just shows a very different style of kalamkari. And I think this one is not. The previous one was block printed. This one, I believe, is kalamkari. and how complex to make a big field like this, all with these kind of early historical QR code pattern. And the kind of evolution of these ikat or patola inspired designs went even further, to the point that they almost are nonsensical ikat designs. These are just zigzag, square, and triangular patterns referencing ikat. But I again, to me, it shows the wonderful imagination and of the designers from South India. These all we understand them to come from the Deccan and the Coromandel coast, but we know that they mainly they're identified through the ports from which they were sent, but they could have been made anywhere in the hinterland. They could even have been made very far away. So we still need to learn a lot more about all these and all these cloths, and that there's so much variation that I'm sure they came from a vast area all over the subcontinent. Here is another iteration, also kalamkari. So this is not block printed, and from the 18th century, all natural, beautiful dyes. And you can see these, all the little squares are not done with a block, they are done with a pen. And if it's mind-boggling, you think how you do that over a giant field like this. And then yet another variation of this ikat design, a patola design. And this one appears to be a block, perhaps. But anyway, even within this family, there are so many different styles from what we have. A little note about the cloths that were made for island Southeast Asia. This is the sarong format. The sarong in Malay is strictly speaking a tube, so it has to be sewn up, and you step into it like a longji. And it is characterized by these sawtooth patterns, which we call tumpal, or in Malay also pucuk rubung, or bamboo shoot. The center red field we call the kepala, which is also from an Indian word, the head, and the rest of it the badan, or the body, which has the repeat pattern. And we have wonderful 17th century European travelers' illustrations of Eurasian women in Batavia or Jakarta wearing these wonderful trade cloths, and you can see the characteristic tumpal or zigzag borders, and these wonderful reds and chai reds and indigo blues. Many of these cloths survive in all kinds of patterns, so we see this beautiful grid patterns to imitation checks, so again imitating woven designs. And I love this account in the Malay Annals or Sejarah Melayu of this incredible love affair with Sarasa or Chintz, where Sultan Mahmud Shah sent a courtier Hang Nadin to Kalinga to fulfill his desire to have 40 varieties of Sarasa with 4 lengths of each variety, and each variety with 40 varieties of floral motifs. So, yeah, big demands. So really much loved and admired. And I like to speculate it had this sort of feeling. This is a textile we found from Sumatra, but it's all beautifully hand is a kalamkari, and I love the order and disorder of a piece like this. And I suppose the difference between the beauty of a kalamkari versus a woven pattern, because you can make a beautiful textile and not have it repeated in any mechanical way. That's the freedom of the pen. Then you also have these other kinds. I think these are more inspired by Mughal or Dutch designs, and you had the chintz being like sent to Europe. But the designs like this also were sent in huge quantities to island Southeast Asia. And again, of varying qualities. So the one on the left is a higher quality example, and the one on the right is a rougher quality. And we had the full range, and everybody's kept these. And many of these were pieces of yardage which were tailored into these long robes. And, so many kinds that have survived with white ground, red ground. And surviving also are these long pieces of yardage, often 2 to 3 meters long. If you look at the one on the right, it has a little blue line. So the pieces of yardage were usually defined by the blue lines at two ends. So you know that it hasn't been cut. And you have a complete piece of yardage. And these were tailored into ropes like we saw earlier. And also of varying qualities. You can see some of them are very fine and some of lesser quality. I love this picture, very famous, of the Sultan of Tidor. This is where all the nutmeg came from, and the rulers there got very wealthy. And here he is this painting is in Poland. I'm not sure how it ended there, but here we see him wearing this beautiful, possibly chintz robe, and you look at how he styled himself with gold bangles in his hair, and this back to the whole idea of Southeast Asia, where we just took all this luxury goods from everywhere and fashioned it in our own individual ways. And one beautiful aspect, and we only see these on some examples, but these kalamkaris have an incredible range of filler patterns. In batik, we call this isen. So these are, in all the patterns, you see the full range of small little patterns. There is an entire family of them, and interestingly, they completely relate to the filler patterns on batik. And there are several versions of this 18th century textile, but this is the only one with this full range of filler pattern. This is a robe that we gifted to the Asian Civilizations Museum 14 years ago. And it is a patchwork from South Sumatra, and it is virtually an encyclopedia. It shows you the full range of trade textiles that were sent to the south of Sumatra, including chintzes, kalankaris. You will probably spot some brocades. I think there's some Gujarati brocades here. Some felt, European wool and felt. And even the kalamkaris are of, some are imitation checks, and some floral ones, and, really so many different styles. And it really shows you the incredible trade in the region. And it also engendered this imitation patchwork pattern. And these were very much in demand in island Southeast Asia. And interestingly, I was in Chennai in October, and I saw this beautiful painting of a Muslim nobleman in front of an old man. So seated old man, but in a beautiful patchwork coat. And if anyone can tell me more about the significance of these coats, I'd be very, very happy. These textiles were kept in homes just like this in South Sumatra. This is in Lampung. I went to visit this lady, and she showed me her heirloom Indian textile kept in a beautiful big cabinet behind her. This area was a big pepper producing area, and they sold the pepper for these beautiful cloths which they use in their ceremonies. And here is an example. I snapped this photo from one of the families. In this ceremony, you can see the head of the village with his kalamkari robe in a ceremony, wedding ceremony. There is also another interesting type of a Ramayana textile. These were interestingly traded at a time when island Southeast Asia had become Muslim. I mean, it was most of the Sultan kingdoms were Muslim. And this is Arjuna. And many of these textiles have survived, usually in terrible condition. And I always wondered, why were they kind of so, and all with holes, and they look really used. And I've discovered why recently. And this is why they were used. So these are dances, warrior dances, doing something called the Chakalele in the Wapawe Mosque. So this is a mosque in Ambon, November 2023. And I got these images courtesy of a dear friend, Hélène Nyoto, in Paris, who is doing a project to some conservation work in the mosque. And just to tell you, also Ambon is here, right? So they were traded right up to here, and here is I found now. Sorry, excuse me. So what is very interesting, you will see from the picture that there are in fact 2 layers. So this is considered a very sacred textile in the mosque, this Ramayana. And because the textile was in poor condition, the conservation team helping Dr. Helen Nyoto and her team managed to make a scan of one in very good condition belonging to a noted American textile specialist called Thomas Murray. So this was a digital scan done, but in order to transfer the spiritual kind of aura of the original cloth, for this dance, they put the old and new one together. There are also very interesting cross features of these kalamkari sent to Southeast Asia. So this is one found specifically in Ambon, in also eastern Indonesia, and these are incredible. They are characterized by this fine kind of lace-like black and white drawings. I had a beautiful detail. These are extremely fine. If you see the detail of this lace-like work, and these lace-like borders are only found on textiles sent to this island. And they call them reda. And I'm just wondering, the old Portuguese word for lace is renda, and we have this in some southern Indian languages also, and in Sri Lanka and in Malay, the term for lace is renda from the Portuguese, and these are reda, and I'm just guessing, but there could be some connection with why they are called redas. But you see this very fine kalamkari work here, and this incredible technique of dotting to create a pattern. And just to show you where Alor, they were found in Alor, which is towards the side, and these textiles are all found in this area, only in this area. The other special thing about textiles traded to the islands is this idea of contrasting patterns. I think we think of that as very modern and contemporary now, to clash through 2 very opposing patterns. And this is again a double-sized cloth. It's very huge. And quite often what's really amazing is they're not 2 pieces sewn together. This is, the looms, the commercial looms in India were incredible to weave something of the width of, more than 2 meters. And one amazing aspect of these textiles traded is the 2-sided kalamkari. And I believe the reason for this is that they were worn as costumes, so you needed to see the backs of them, and they are really dyed 2 ways. I had a chat with the textile artist Renita Reddy, who makes kalamkaris today in Bangalore. And she says that fine kalamkari work has to be made, and correct me if I'm wrong, on very high thread count. And the preference in Southeast Asia has been for very loose weaves because of the heat and everything. So the higher thread counts, the kalamkaris made on those were sent to Europe. And for Southeast Asia, the requirement was for looser weaves. So you couldn't do these fine drawings, so you compensated the value by making very complex designs. So here you can see this is all done by kalamkari. So the wax resists drawing these very complex spiral designs on two sides. So the amount of work taken on a cloth of this size, you can imagine, I think was to add back value on very thin cloths. And we in Malay, we have a saying, I think you can understand most of the words, it's kain cip dua muka. So although it's a luxury cloth, in this sense, it's used for a kind of a two-faced person. So, yeah. Kain cip dua muka is, sadly, not a good, happy expression. But, it's a very valuable cloth to have it two sides. And here, just to show you the contrast, is a one-sided cloth. So here you can see when it's not dyed on the other side, there's quite a big difference. And so obviously two sides are very valuable, increases the value for sale. And here I'm showing more of these contrasting patterns that we see very specifically for orders to island Southeast Asia. This is back to that Grinsing pattern. And we also have a lot of mysterious, unconventional patterns. Some may be made on special order for island Southeast Asia. These look like to have, looks like a vase with some flowers and I don't know, anyway, all kinds of unknown patterns. This one to me looks like based on some kind of writing, but it could be nonsensical script. To amazing designs like this and spirals and circular ripple effect patterns, and even something like this which looks so modern and 60s and Carnaby Street psychedelic. Sorry, you young kids don't know what psychedelic Carnaby Street means, but kind of a 1960s vibe to these textiles. I'll finally just run through a couple of other textiles that were traded to island Southeast Asia. And we know, for example, brocades. So if someone can help me, but we see these terms, antelas and atelas. I'm not sure what the origin of the word is. And we sometimes see these terms, antelas Gujarati, antelas Hindi, and antelas Masri is mushru, so, with the continent silk. And of course, the Persian word is kimkar, and zarbaf, which are terms we always see in Malay texts. And we see already in the 1830s imports of, on the left, 25 pieces of antelas coming from Bombay. And on the 6th of October, on the 27th, into Singapore, and on the 27th, transit out of Singapore to the islands. So Singapore was one of the stopping points of all these imports. And here are the kind of brocades that we see surviving, most of it not too early in the 19th century. They look Deccani to me. I don't know if someone could advise, but maybe this Gujarati Deccani, I'm not sure, but we have a whole lot of these antelas textiles. And if you ever go to Bangkok in the Queen Sirikit Museum, there's a wonderful exhibition on court textiles at the moment, including many examples of Indian chintz and brocades. And interestingly, one of them is described as an antelas as well, and king cup. So these terms also found their way to the Thai court. And these all belong to a princess from the island of Riau, the Sultanate of Riau. And these were donated to the then Raffles Museum, now belonging to the Asian Civilizations Museum. A full range of these brocades made into beautiful, what we call baju kurungs, which again looked like Indian-style garments as well. And also these mushrooms, so you can see this amazing striped cloth. So the striped is achieved by a silk warp, and the in-between spaces have no have no warp, only the weft. And here you see the reverse. So it's a mushroom because the silk is only facing the outside. So as you know, all mushrooms, there's no the silk cannot touch the skin. So the back is cotton. So these are just cotton wefts without the warps, and then the outer silk warps. And we have. I originally thought this purse was made of Chinese silk, but when I look closely through a loop, you can see it's a mushroom. So it's the cotton base with very fine silk filaments as the I'm not sure if there's a warp or weft, but anyway, the overlay of silk filaments on a cotton base is a mushroom. And then we also have muslins, kasa and komakmao, and as well as something we call a sorban or Hajj turbans. So embroidered Bengal textiles, muslins with a chain stitch. And these we see, for example, also in John Forbes Watson's work on and examples in his the textile manufacturers of India. And examples of this were traded and used as headscarves. And we have also this interesting group of Bengal embroideries that were used on the Hajj routes, so worn en route and back and in Mecca. Many different versions exist on very fine silk or cotton, and then we have imitations made. These ended up all along the Hajj route, and some of these have Syrian, Yemeni or Syrian stamps. So I'm not sure if these are traders, and these all came from Bengal, possibly. And this is an example of how they were kept in Sumatra. This is a family of West Sumatra, and this shawl was used by the subject's ancestor, and it was apparently draped over for worship, receiving guests, and giving sermons. And even wool, you think Southeast Asia, it's too hot for anyone to wear wool, but again, considered a luxury cloth, and we had these very old terms, Ainul Banat. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with the word sakhlat, but it's a very old term, and it went westward to Europe as I think it's a Persian term, and it's the origin of the word scarlet, which was originally a wool, and because the wool was red, and it became a term for red, but in our old texts, we still see this word in reference to wool. So we see like sometimes saklat buatan Bengala, so saklat made in Bengal, or shal Kashmiri. And here are examples of 19th century wool garments on twill. And we even have surviving garments like robes like this. They look like tilla embroidery. And these good waistcoats, which they're called beskot, but they look like the sadris we find in Gujarat. These all, I'm not sure if they were traded or copied from these Gujarati style waistcoats. And on these on a wool base as well, with wonderful Indian Manchester printed cottons for linings. And we see examples of southern Philippine Suluk nobles passing through Singapore in their fashionable Ottoman styles. And with these wool, perhaps this kind of wool jackets. But you can already see the fashion was so hybrid at that time. So he's wearing more of a, I don't know, maybe a European / Ottoman inspired jacket, etc. And here we have descriptions of imports of Kashmir shawls, and Kishtwar is a specific place in Kashmir, and shawls that came from there in the 1840s, 1880s. And here are examples of the kind of shawls we find in Sumatra. All kinds of qualities, of course, not as fine as what you get for the rulers here, but these are the trade level Kashmiri shawls that were finding their way to Sumatra. and this could be a European copy that also was traded. And this fascinating kalamkari copy of a Kashmiri shawl, which we also found in Sumatra. And lastly, this is the most beloved and common textile, what we call chile or kain pelikat. Pelikat is a reference to pulikat in Andhra, and it's the beloved check lungi that we all wear. And this was the kind of Uniqlo of that era, I'd like to say. If you think about it, how important this cloth was. It was traded to the Caribbean. Later on, it was an Ivy League fashion to wear Madras cloth, and this is the height, global fashion from India. And you see these early Singapore residents. This is an early picture of Singapore, and Indians and Malays in their checked lungis or saroks. And I'm just fascinated by the signage at the top, and the idea of Singapore as a multicultural city. So it's a Chinese tailor, Tong Cheong, but also in English, Chinese, and this is Jawi or Arabic Malay, Malay and Arabic script. Wherever anybody opened a shop, they had to sort of appeal to a broad section of Singapore. And this is a picture of these Malay nobles, and you can see in the range of check cloths. And even this example, it's a kind of a Chinese style robe, but made with Indian cotton. And you see them everyone's wearing, bits of Madras checked cotton cloth. Here we have the gentleman on the left and the lady and this couple, and both are wearing variations of this check cloth, but in different ways. The man is wearing a rolled up version called a samping, and the lady a long sarong. And you see branding coming into the picture, and this is a chap krosi, which you understand. We use the word chap also for a stamp or brand, and krosi is chair in Malay as well. Here we see among Indian Muslim gentlemen this new fashion, nice mix of like a Western style jacket, a Madras lungi, a canvas belt, and worn quite high up, like kind of way above the ankle. And these fez-like caps. This is a beautiful hybrid style of dressing that became fashionable among young Muslim gentlemen, not only Indian Muslim, but Malays and Japanese. It became quite a fashionable style all over the region. And it's interesting, the newspapers, and even in the 1930s, somebody could be fined for stealing a pulikat sarong worth 50 cents. And here we have what we call Peranakan Indian women. So these community of Indians, South Indians who were Malay speaking and dressed in this sort of hybrid style of the Malay Archipelago. And you can see them wearing their check sarongs as well. And this is my great-great-grandmother. And you see her wearing not only the check sarong, but a checked handkerchief. And these red handkerchiefs were very popular because my great-great-grandmother and the ladies of her generation were all eating pan. And so you needed a red hanky to hide the stains. So these, but they were also not only for handkerchiefs and sarongs, but also for the tailored into these long robes. And here, example of the kind of rumals or what we call saputangans made from these Madras cottons, and always in a red for dabbing the mouth after chewing the pan. And they are still sold and very popular. So this is a paper bag of a shop I bought just recently. Still selling kain pulikats, and this brand Chop Rosi is still around after this for almost 100 years. So, in conclusion, I hope from this session to share the idea of the importance of interwoven histories, interwoven art. I love the idea of cultural mayhem. I'm really against the idea that, when we think about the past, I think we're sometimes too attached to the idea of tradition. And tradition, in a way, has been important for social control so that we don't misbehave or, become too chaotic. But at the same time, it's not really in our DNA to all comply and dress the same way. It's sort of a social contract. Okay, what's the dress code today? But individually, if you look, even one family, we can't agree on anything, right? How families, this is a classic Indian dish, or that, no, you're wrong, is this? And I as a historian, when I do, field work, I'm often so amused when you talk to siblings and you get completely different stories from everybody. We should celebrate our inconsistencies. Of course, it can lead to, real mayhem, but in another sense, I think culturally we should look beyond the main narratives and at all the amazing, curious, idiosyncratic stories that make us human. And I think in so doing, we need to kind of reassert or rehabilitate things that have been considered so, bad words like copying, appropriating. But if you look at this history, a lot of the designs came from these ideas, and we can only, learn new art and by absorbing and borrowing, and these are, it's too caught up in the fight we have with the boundaries we've set. And I think culturally, a more gray area helps us to become a little bit more creative. I also like this subject in particular because so much of our history now we see through the lens of royal courts, and this is a way to discover our non-royal ancestors, of people like us who were traders and the craftsmen, and other narratives which I think were as equally important as these royal narratives. And we can reclaim history back to our people. In conclusion, I'd just like to share with you some pictures of kain pelikat in my family. So this is my grandfather at the back. So he would wear it. I guess you would too here in the lungi at home. Already, this is about maybe 1930. That's my father. But my grandfather is in his lungi and his t-shirt. This is a picture of my late mother from the 1950s. It was very fashionable to wear cheongsams and saris and all kinds of different styles. She was very young in her 20s. And this is my father, so that's him as a boy. And here he is, how he would dress at home in his just typical pelikat and his t-shirt, just like his father. And that's my big brother. And if I may, all you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Your love like glowing in your eyes so true. Let me call you sweet, I'm in love with you. Thank you. And this presentation is in honor and loving memory of Mr. Jagdish Mittal of Hyderabad, the sweetheart who left us 2 months ago. Thank you very much.
I was just wondering, in India, colonialism had a pretty bad impact on textiles, especially in the north. So I'm wondering if Southeast Asia had a similar impact, or was that different?
Yeah, when one of the imperial missions, British imperial mission, was to uh, compete with India in the sale of in the production and trade of of cottons. And when Raffles came to Java, he was governor of Java in the late 1818, early 19th century. Uh, his letters are full of his concerns about increasing British trade. And yes, it was really devastating. And we see from that time the decrease in the supply from India and the increase in European imports. But what was interesting, they try, even Raffles, Sanford Raffles was the founder of Singapore, which is he founded in 1890. And he really himself tried to produce imitation atolas and sarongs for sale, but he failed. They couldn't, it was still quite hard to get the dyers right for our time. So what was interesting, a lot of what they produced was not taken up. So the many ventures were failed. And for example, I didn't show a particular type of what they call kain sambagi. So it was a Coromandel Coast textile traded to Sumatra. That continued to be popular because nobody wanted the cheap knockoffs that the British were producing at that time. So some types of Indian manufacturers still managed to survive. And as we know, the devastating effect in India. But for the region, some types still survived. While, yeah, we could see that for the Sawasas, the trade just completely diminished. And in fact, what happened was this vacuum was replaced not by the European prince, but by batik. So it coincided with the rise of Javanese batik production on a big commercial scale. So that kind of came about at the same time with the supply from India decline. But what was interesting about the Javanese commercial batik production was that they used European machine-made cotton, which was cheap enough as a basis for them to produce batiks on a bigger commercial scale. So it created some bad things, a little good things came out of India at that time, but bigger devastation. And the Javanese themselves took up this the challenge to produce the kind of hand-drawn textiles that was still in demand. What's interesting, the Dutch tried to produce all these imitation batiks and Indian cloths, which fails. And apparently what they did, and because the take-up was so poor, these were traded very cheaply to Africa, and then started this whole new, white sprints trend in Africa, which is now so trendy. But the story for that actually starts in what they were imitations that they were trying to make for island Southeast Asia and Indonesian, and not succeeding, and then the stock ending up in Africa and starting this amazing new style that became very popular there. So, something bad happens and something interesting happens after, but that's how this speakers are in.
Hello, it was a very illuminating talk. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for that, Peter. So I have just to add something. The sarsa, what you say is the sarsa cloth, actually comes from the Gujarati word saras. Saras means beautiful. So sarsa is that. Even the Japanese use that word for kalamkari, sarsa. And another thing I just wanted to add is that it's the Coromandel Coast which you have, and the block printing. I want to add two more points. The block printing is also kalamkari. So it was also used with mordants and resist to make it. The process was the same, only they didn't have that kalam to draw it. But they did use moderns and resist to dye those designs using blocks, and which they still do it. And the third point is, yes, of course, the Europeans systematically destroyed the Indian textile setup. And it's very sad how they broke the blocks. Especially, they flooded the market with their cheap cloth, the British, especially the British, and they took away the cotton. The Deccan was known for its very beautiful cotton, which they took away completely, took it to England, and then they produced mass cloths and tried to imitate every design that were woven in India or like color with painted, dyed in India on the prints. And that's how. And actually, they discouraged the weavers and the kalamkari artists to do work. And discouraged and brought them out of business in a very, very systematic way. So that's very sad, but still, India has that resilience to continue
Yes,
with its arts and crafts. It comes back. And I'm very happy and very grateful to these artists who are continuing their generational artwork, uh, and institutions like Crafts Council of Telangana and India who are promoting this in a very, very systematic and very dedicated way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I may just respond to that. So yeah, what I find a little curious. So yeah, clearly the word Sarasa has an Indian etymological origin, but it within India, I think I'm not really certain whether it was a trade term for a textile within India. Because so far I've seen it in reference only to trade records in Dutch records. Say it doesn't seem, I had not found a source whether it was actually used as a term for the cloth. And if someone can enlighten me, maybe it did mean a kalamkari in one place, but so that is a mystery. For me, still to be solved. The other thing is for Japan. So actually, the Japanese learned the term because the Dutch were bringing the sarasas from island Southeast Asia. So it became the popular term for it within the region. So we find in Portuguese and Dutch reports already, this is the word for chintz. And then they started bringing it to Hirado and Nagasaki. I found the earliest reference to it. So it's some documents that have survived in trade records in the British Library. So these are from the early 17th century, and there are two documents. So the English version and the Japanese receipt. So the Japanese receipt just repeats the English, which says like 17 sarasas. So that showed that when the term entered Japan. So the Japanese used it, and it had a transliteration of sarasa, kanakin, and some other textiles. So that kind of showed you how the word entered into Japan. Yeah. And so one point, if I may learn. So I always understood kalamkari to only strictly be pen drawn by the pen, that it didn't include block print. So it does include block print. It's now a general term, including hand drawn and block printed. I see. So
And this is dye.
was called kalamkari. Yeah, whether it was hand drawn or. So I thought it just specifically referenced kalam only, but okay. Yeah, thank you for it.
Also originated in Gujarat in some ways, at least my research.
I see.
That because you see those posat
Fragments, yes.
they are kind of kalamkaris,
I see.
very early kind of kalamkaris. And then you come here, it did originate because they also had that Mata Ki Biche, which is still, it's a kalamkari also. So these they were great places in Gujarat, which was very well known for kalamkaris. Very early, I'm speaking. So, and then Later on, it moved to Coromandel Coast at the Pulicat and down south up till Madras and even further down. So it did originate in Gujarat.
I see.
And then it moved to different places. And even places like Baranpur also was famous because Kalankari was very coveted even by the Mughals because they had these great tents.
Mhm.
The tent.
Yes.
So they were all done with Kalankari.
I see.
So Deccan also was very good, famous for Kalankari. And then we have Pichwa is also in Kalankari, which is my book.
Yes.
Has. So Kalankari was a very coveted kind of a cloth, which was, I mean, all the people, not only the big. So that.
Thank you. Yeah.
సారీ నేను తెలుగులో అవుతా ట్రాన్స్లేట్ చేస్తాయి అంటే మీరు చూపించినట్టు అన్ని రెండు బ్లాక్ ప్రింట్ పెయింట్లు పేటెడ్ దీంట్లో బేసిక్గా వచ్చేసి మనకి మెటీరియల్ క్లాత్ కానీ లేకుంటే డై మెటీరియల్ ఇప్పుడు మీ దగ్గర అది ఆ నాలెడ్జ్ అనేది ఎలా మీరు చూస్తున్నారు డై మెటీరియల్ కానీ లేకపోతే క్లాత్ మెటీరియల్ దాంట్లో నుంచి నాలెడ్జ్ని ఎలా గుర్తుపడతారు అక్కడ లేకపోతే మీరు ఎలా చూస్తున్నారో ఇండియా నుంచి అక్కడికి వెళ్ళినప్పుడు ఇండియాలో అలాంటి మెటీరియల్స్ ఇంకా ఉన్నాయని అనుకుంటున్నారా దాని గురించి మేము
I'll just put it from my side on it. This is about his question is about the material knowledge, of both of the processes of of printing, of weaving, and so on, and also of the materials themselves, the dye, the fiber, and so for us, it's very striking that that particular historical moment where the colonizer fails, the failure of that particular project, and failure in the sense that it's sort of the market instead they have to find other markets, right? And we were just reading Marilyn Bowles' paper on this, on mimesis and the imitation of the crackle foresters. So Dharminder's question is, how is it that this, both historically and now in the contemporary, how is it that there was such widespread common material knowledge among these people, among of various strata of society in the Malay Archipelago, and do you see this continuing into the present in some form? What accounts for this, and how do we sort of keep this going, or in what ways can we take inspiration from it for our present move?
Yeah, I feel sadly the with nationalism, the all links have kind of diminished, and the knowledge and the connections and the understanding of these connections has really kind of lessened. So a lot of people now, because of this focus on Indonesia, have lost interest in these Kalankaris, and as a result, many people don't see it as part of Indonesian heritage. So Indonesian collectors actually have stopped. I don't collect Kalankaris. And as a result, these pieces have ended up in institutions all over the world. In fact, I do not know a single Indonesian collector of this heritage, which, it's a two-way relationship, and they've given it up because their vast collections of Chinese porcelain. They had amazing blue and whites from the yuan, and many of the most beautiful pieces have left. So but for batik, for the knowledge and all that, it's transferred to batik. And observing how that happened is quite interesting. So from Raffles's time, he recorded in his History of Java that local Javanese producers could not make a color fast red. They still couldn't. And I found an interesting court case from the 1790s where two Chinese entrepreneurs were trying to set up a business, and one sued the other because he put in money and the other dyer, all the colors all ran. So I think getting that red was still
quite mysterious for people elsewhere. And I think only later on they discovered that using mungkudu root, which is another tropical root, which they mixed with another leaf, which was very high in alum, called jirik. And this paste used together and rubbed onto the textile created their version of a color fast red. And it would take a month of soaking and hanging and soaking to get the red to that level. And I think it was a bit of trial and error, but they didn't use chai root ever. Out of interest, we did an investigation into some old batiks that we knew came from specific workshops, and we were shocked at the findings because there was no consistency in thread count of the cottons or in the dyes. Many of them had different combinations of different dyes. So that it sort of signified this trial and error aspect of it. But talking to just the other day, 2 days ago, to my friend Renuka Reddy, she was telling me about the challenges in removing wax. That apparently boiling does not, she said, completely remove the wax. And so she's very curious how the Javanese do it. So there might be remnants of old techniques that are remembered that still continue in batik, but they don't really see it as something remembered from kalankaris. Although when you look at the very oldest batiks, they are exactly like kalankaris in terms of the motif, the designs and everything. So the relationship is so direct, but the cultural or heritage links between the two have been broken. So I don't know, maybe more collaborations between Indonesia and India. I've just had a chat with Darshan Shah of Weaver Studio. So she's planning to do a project on the Shantiniketan Tagore's batiks, and he went to Java and everything. So she's hoping to do this collaboration with contemporary Javanese batik makers and Indian kalamkari producers. Maybe that could be something nice that comes out of learning back two ways. The other interesting thing I found in a researcher had brought up this interesting account from a Dutch record, which showed how, which described fines in Java for copying kalamkari. And it said that the copies were so good at that time that they were indistinguishable. So there could be some copies floating around that we think are Indian, but they could have been made in Java. You don't know. And obviously somebody knew how to fix the dyes, but subsequently it was forgotten. And Raffles, despite in the 19th century, early 19th century, nobody could make a good color fast red.
So I think I just have one concluding question for you. Is there any evidence that the motifs that we find in these textiles have traveled into any other indigenous craft forms in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, about 20 years ago, Robin Maxwell, the curator of National Gallery of Australia, did this wonderful exhibition called Sari to Sarong. And it showed all the influences on kalamkari and patola designs in all the island communities throughout Southeast Asia, and how that classic patola pattern could be found in local weaves. So there was a strong influence and relationship between Indian textiles and locally crafted textiles as well. So, and it's still ongoing.
So thank you very much, and a big hand to the people. Thank you so much. Kusum again.
It was a lovely morning having all you guests, students, members, and eminent historians. Dr. Lipika is here, Anita Shah is there, and just now I saw Vijay from Alampur. I think she's left. Has she? No, she just left. Okay. It gives me great pleasure to thank all of you for coming this morning for this beautiful and informative talk by you, Mr. Peter Lee. Thank you so much. First of all, a very big thank you to you for graciously accepting our invitation to come to CCT and share your insights on the intricacy of WASTRA, Indian textiles in the islands of Southeast Asia, right from 1400 to 1900. It's a long, long way. CCT is blessed to have such amazing speakers come here and share their knowledge. Thank you, dear students from NIFT. I hope you come again. We are going to have another talk which will be announced soon. And friends, students, for graciously coming here, spending your time, your valuable time coming here and blessing CCT. And I hope we can come up with more such talks and workshops and exhibitions for all of you. Thank you to our staff for painstakingly each time getting the events organized. Thank you to the members, the committee members, and a big thank you to all of you all first for making this event so successful. Thank you.